I raised my prices, and when I did that, I lost clients. They were people I had worked hard for, people I had genuinely gone above and beyond to keep happy, and they just saw the number and they were gone, right? And for a few weeks after that, I had this inbox that had gone really quiet and a pipeline that just felt thin, to be honest. And this one question that just kept running in my head on loop: did I just blow up something I had spent years building? If that fear is the reason you haven't raised your prices yet, this video is for you. In my business, I had been operating at the same rate for long enough that the number had started to feel permanent, right? Like I had always been there and always would be. My roster of clients was full and things were predictable and we were selling more and more, but the math wasn't adding up. And if I'm being honest with myself, I had started to resent some of the work. Not because the work was bad, but because I knew what I was charging and it wasn't right. It wasn't enough ultimately. I'd look at my calendar and I feel like I was running just to stand still. Like no matter how busy I wasn't actually getting ahead. So I made the call. I raised my prices significantly, and I want to be clear on that. This wasn't 10%. This is what I should have been charging years ago kind of number. And I know going into that, some clients would stop booking, and everyone will tell you that. Some people will leave, or some people will ignore you or ghost you, and that's just going to be part of it. And that's okay. That's a part of business. But what nobody tells you is what it actually feels like when your inbox goes quiet and you're the one who pulled the trigger on it, right? I think most people who avoid raising their prices aren't actually scared of losing money. They're scared of being wrong about themselves, or they're scared of the slowness, because as entrepreneurs, we all often like the busyness. And it's because when you raise your prices, you're making that statement. You're saying, I believe this work is worth more. And when a client looks at that number and says, no thanks, or even politely says, I'm going in another direction, some part of your brain hears, I don't agree and I don't value you. And that's the fear. And it's not financial, right? It's identity. And I've talked to so many business owners who have known for a year, sometimes multiple years, that their prices were too low. They knew it, but they stayed stuck because the emotional risk of finding out the new number, that it won't land, it felt too big. It felt like too much of an undertaking. It felt too almost emotional or mental, right? It's all taxing. So I want you to keep that in mind as I tell you what actually happened, because the outcome wasn't what I expected in so many ways. Some clients did leave immediately or ghosted or just didn't book, right? And it wasn't dramatic. It just felt tough. It was often a polite thanks for everything. This just doesn't fit our budget, or I'm going another direction, whatever it may be. Some people would ghost after seeing numbers. And one potential client I had a really honest conversation with about where they were financially. And we genuinely just said this wasn't the right fit. But here's what surprised me: I actually felt relieved. Like, not devastated. I was sad, don't get me wrong. It was tricky to navigate, but I felt a relief because when I got honest with myself, I already knew which relationships had been costing me more than they were paying me, or which potential clients were going to cost me more than they were paying me. And I don't mean money, I just mean energy, or the ones that sent last minute messages expecting a same day turnaround or something specific added to their package that was really kind of a red flag that I wasn't noticing. And oftentimes it's those ones that are paying the least amount, right? And so it's the ones that I started to dread. I started to dread seeing their name come through, or dread seeing a lead that felt that there were those yellow or red flags. And those types of clients, they left when the price went up, or they just didn't book. And when they did that, they actually did something for me that I wasn't willing to do for myself. It was to give me stress relief. I don't like, it was to give me some freedom, and again, like I said, relief. Now, the work that came in after the change was different because a lot of what I do is project based. It wasn't really about who stayed versus who left, it was about who started showing up. And the inquiries that started coming in were from people who had already done their research and already knew what they wanted. And they weren't coming in trying to negotiate before we had even had a conversation. That shift alone, just in my sales process, was worth raising my prices for. And then there's the gap. This is the part I really want to spend time on because this is where most people break. After the departures or ghostings or non bookings, there's this window. It might be a few weeks and it could be longer. Honestly, I think I went through a few months of struggles here. But depending on your business and your sales cycle, it sits between the projects that ended and new work at this higher rate. And your brain, which is really good at worst case scenario thinking, looks at a thin pipeline and it starts building a case. What if the new clients never come? What if my old rate was actually right? And I've been kidding myself this whole time. What if I just made a massive mistake? What if I just shot myself in the foot and the business is going down? That's how I felt. And I want to tell you something. This window is supposed to exist. The discomfort in it is supposed to be there. It's not a signal that you made the wrong call. It's just what the in between feels like. It's the reality that we all face. And the mistake people make in the gap is that they panic. They discount it for someone or this new lead, this new project. They walk the number back slowly in those types of ways and they make a decision about their entire direction of their business based on a few weeks of data and some uncomfortability. And that's the thing. A few weeks doesn't tell you anything. It really doesn't. Like even a few months oftentimes doesn't tell you all that much. Here's what actually helped me get through it though. On the practical side, when your roster is full, when you're busy, you get lazy about lead generation. At least I do. And the gap kind of forced me to get intentional again about how I was talking about my work, about who I was actually trying to attract at the new price point, because that person is genuinely different from who you were attracting at the old one. The way you position yourself, the problems you had with the language you use, all of this shifts a little bit when the number shifts. I also finally had more space to do things that I was putting off for a long time. There's so many tasks that keep getting moved to my someday category. And honestly, I wouldn't have had any room for that if my calendar stayed full, if we continuously were project managing. And on the mindset side, something shifted for me. I gave myself a real timeline. I didn't just give myself 4 weeks and then start panicking. I committed to 90 days before I let myself make any big decisions about whether this was working or not. 1 month of a thin pipeline doesn't tell you anything meaningful, like I said. But yeah, at some stage, I know I said months doesn't tell you much, but at some stage, it starts to reveal something. And I made a decision to stop relitigating the choice, rethinking the choice over and over again. The price is the price now. My job in this window wasn't to keep asking myself whether it was right anymore. My job was to become the kind of business that justified the number. So I started working on building the business around the price. Around 6 to 8 weeks in, things honestly started to shift. New inquiries started to come in. It wasn't just like a flood. It wasn't like the floodgates started to open, right? But they were noticeably different. People at the higher price point had already done more research before reaching out. Like I said, they knew what they wanted. They were ready to move. The conversations were easier and they were less convincing. It was less of, can you help me understand why this costs that much? And the work itself, even, it got better, not because I was doing anything different, but because I was working with people who were more bought in, more prepared, more trusting, more present. And when someone invests more, they tend to show up more. And again, that changes everything about what it actually feels like to do the work. The other thing I noticed, I was closing a smaller percentage of inquiries, right? But a much higher percentage of the ones that actually mattered. I stopped taking every project just because it was revenue. The hit rate on the right work went way up and it felt so much better. Fewer projects, better projects, more of the work I actually wanted to do. So here's what I would tell you if you're sitting where I was or if you're thinking about raising your prices. Raising them will cost you work. It not might, like it's going to cost you work. And that's supposed to happen. Is not a mistake. It's the market sorting itself in response to a new signal that you're sending. And it's what you're sending about your value. The projects that don't come in at the new price were never going to be your long term, high trust, do your best work opportunities anyway. There was always going to be misalignment somewhere under the surface. The price increase just accelerated that sorting for you. The gap is going to be real. And if you have no runway and every single dollar matters right now, this is a little bit more complicated. So I do understand that. You need to plan accordingly before you pull the trigger. Get some leadway here. But if you have any margin at all, go ahead, try it, raise those prices and give it 90 days before you decide anything, but spend that gap building your business into those prices. What I would do differently though, man, I would raise them sooner. I'd stop using a full calendar as a reason to stay underpriced and I would trust the discomfort of the in between more. Because what showed up on the other side of it was actually what I wanted the business to look like from the beginning. That's the honest version of this story. It is hard. Don't get me wrong. I understand the mental battles. I deal with so much like up here as you do. It is so hard sometimes. And you often feel like you're doing it alone. But know that you can come here and we are in this together. And ultimately, remember to enjoy the journey, my friend. And I'll see you in the next one.